Alright, just to clarify something for you folks at home, this is actually the second movie this year that has come out in the last month or so to star a hero called Captain Marvel. In case you're not too familiar with DC Comics, basically Shazam's real comic accurate name is in fact Captain Marvel. But since Marvel already released that movie this year, they're like, what do we call this movie again? Oh yeah, that's right. What's his signature catchphrase? Let's call the movie that. Just a little clarification there. Shazam is the newest film in the DC Extended Universe, and it seems to pick up on the hot streak that DC has had. Hot streak in that they're not producing phenomenal comic book movies, they're producing fine, good, adequate comic book movies, which is a lot more than they have had to say in the past. Wonder Woman was pretty solid. Aquaman, I had a lot more fun with Aquaman than I was expecting. I just, in fact, watched it for the first time last week. And of course now we have Shazam, cementing the fact that maybe DC has kind of figured it out. Turns out when you don't make your movie depressing and dark for 2 hours, people actually ended up enjoying themselves. Huh, go figure. But anyway, Shazam stars Billy Batson himself as he takes on the dark mystical forces that ended up giving him his powers, and he has a whole collection of friends and family along the way. He's a foster kid that's really troubled by his lack of parents and that he really wants to find his way in the world being a superhero, but he's a 14-year-old kid getting superpowers. He acts like a kid, so a lot of this movie is focused on him learning what a hero is meant to be. And I'm not gonna lie, I really dug this movie, at least most of it, but we'll get there. First of all, what this movie does really well is its cast. Zachary Levi as Shazam is really good. I wasn't sure about the writing and directing staff going into this movie, but I knew Zachary Levi himself is perfect casting because he's such a man-child. He's such a perfect role, such a perfect casting for someone who has childlike enthusiasm but is in fact an adult. And a lot of the humor of this movie comes from that childlike enthusiasm. Zac Efron. I almost called him Zac Efron. Zachary Levi's portrayal of Shazam was really spot on in this movie. I loved his delivery. I loved the heart he showed behind the character. Great casting. Speaking of great casting, the main kid who played, Kid Billy Batson was really good. The first couple of scenes you see him in, you're like, man, this kid is such a brat. What is his deal? He needs to chill. But then the movie really gets you to empathize. This movie has a lot of heart, especially when it comes to Billy. You really understand why he's lashing out, acting out, and doing the things he does. At the end of the day, he's just a troubled kid that wants to find his mom, and that made me root for him. This movie does a really good job of showing the heart behind the character. Billy moves into a foster home really early into the movie, and he's accompanied by a lot of his foster adopted brothers and sisters, and a couple of them were amazing. His best friend slash partner in crime, mentor, manager figure is named Freddy, and I really love the kid who played him. He had so much natural chemistry with Billy. It was really fun seeing them interact, and well, most of those interactions were in fact humorous, as the trailers went to show. And that's another thing this movie does well. Its humorous tone is by far the godsend in this movie. Way too many DC films up to this point have taken themselves way too seriously, and DC has been showing that they're willing to take a break with all the dark and moodiness and actually have their characters crack a few jokes, and you'll have a good time. Wonder Woman did it to an extent, Aquaman did it much more, but the comedy is on full display in this movie, and it's actually really funny. A lot of the jokes are really cleverly written, and they feel like natural banter between the characters, kind of like, what's that other superhero billion-dollar franchise that makes a lot of movies again? I found myself laughing through a majority of the jokes in this movie, and it wasn't really cheese or cringe humor, it was just legitimately funny things the characters would say and react to. As far as the other foster home kids go, I feel like a lot of them were just stand-ins for the plot, but apart from Freddy, there's a little girl in this movie, and she's a national treasure. No, seriously, this girl is so adorable and such a little angel. I just want to... She was amazing. Another thing I really liked about this movie was, in fact, the villain. The villain in this movie is played by Mark Strong, and he was really entertaining. Mark Strong is just such a terrifying presence in whatever movie he's in, especially when he's playing villain, so I really liked what he was given to work with here. But no, seriously though, if you want to see a really good Mark Strong villain performance, you watch this movie. And the thing that makes his villain work so well in this movie is that you really understand what he's coming from. It's not that you really get behind what he's doing, and it's not that he completely believes what he's doing is justified or that he wants to make something better in the world, but you really understand the personal place that he's coming from because the movie spends a majority of its first act focusing, in fact, on the villain. The soundtrack is also pretty good in this movie. Not a lot of memorable original compositions like the score, the OST itself isn't very memorable, but the soundtrack, what they chose to play in certain songs or certain moments, it was great. It really cemented the lighthearted tone and humor that they were going for in this movie. That was really nice. So the performances across the board are pretty solid. It's by far the funniest DCEU movie that's been released thus far. It has a lot of heart behind its characters, and the villain is serviceable. It's good. The villain's good. So what exactly could go wrong here? Oh yeah, that's right. This is a DC movie. Once again, I hit this movie with the snack test. I came into the movie with my snack, and it took about 28 minutes for me to open it, which isn't great. It's not quite failing, but it's in the D+, D- range. So the first act is a little slow, and then when the movie actually picks up, when Billy actually gets his powers, when he's doing the whole superhero shtick, when he's learning how to control it, I was all in. The movie was hilarious, and I was having a great time. And I mean a really great time. During the first act and a half, 2 acts of this movie, I was sitting in the theater all like, having a good time, having a good time. A shooting star leaping through the sky like a tiger. And then during the last act of the movie, when he actually has to go do it, go fight the big bad in your giant DC obligatory CGI fight, I'm just sitting there all like, weird. This is the first movie I've watched since Wonder Woman that would reverse fail the snack test, and that I was completely invested in the first 2 acts, but then the third act goes up and ends up sucking. It's not like there's a fake villain reveal twist in this movie like Wonder Woman, so it's not quite as heinous. The problem is, it's just straight up boring. The CGI is a mess, there's a ton of slow-mo, so much slow-mo, and a lot of other choppy editing to boot. There's also a big fake surprise type thing that happens towards the end, which I wouldn't spoil of course, but it's supposed to be like a whole novelty thing, and I didn't see it coming, so kudos to the movie for that. But I feel like enabling the movie to do this in the third act just made the movie recycle itself. It felt like I was watching the first 2 acts again in certain ways. The jokes were recycled, the humor was recycled, and I swear, they straight up full-on copied, plagiarized several shots from Man of Steel's climax in this movie, no joke. It was so weird. This movie feels like such a hodgepodge of DC mess in the end, and that I'm like, wait a minute, I know that shot. That's from Man of Steel. Wait a minute, I know that crappy CGI monster. Is this Justice League? Is this Wonder Woman? Wait a minute, I know that big This is Aquaman, isn't it? DC, you gotta learn how to stick the landing, bro. Your movies are so good in the first 2/3, but you just don't make an overly complicated CGI battle. It doesn't have to be in every superhero movie. So overall, I love the performances, I love the humor. Zachary Levi and Asher, what's his name, who played the main Billy kid, they both did a great job. Some of the supporting cast was really good, and the movie had a lot of heart. There's an emotional, going into the third act, right? Going into the final battle, there's this scene that's the emotional climax of the entire movie, and it got me emotional. I don't know what to say. It was great. And then the third act happens, and then there's giant crappy CGI monsters. I'm gonna give Shazam 3.5 out of 5 stars. DC almost hit it out of the park. This movie was still very enjoyable for me, but when you have your movie end on a sour to mediocre note, it really throws me off. I don't know what to say. So those are my overall thoughts on the movie Shazam. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, but being a DC movie, I was still able to find some pretty glaring flaws. But again, I'm still pretty happy about how this movie turned out overall. It could have been a heck of a lot worse, let's be real. So yes, those are my overall thoughts on Shazam. If you liked the review, let me know in the comments. Be sure to leave a like on the way out, and of course, subscribe for more. As far as future content from this channel goes, I'm thinking about holding off for my How to Train Your Dragon 3 review until that drops later on Blu-ray or such, so I can revisit all 3 movies before I give my thoughts on that one. And of course, my Kingdom Hearts 3 review is still being worked on. I'll get that out sooner than later. Just be patient with me, please. So thank you as always for watching. I am Pack. Thanks so much for hearing my perspective, and I'm out for now.